So the Golden State Warriors season is officially over, following a disastrous loss to the Sacramento Kings. Now, all eyes are on the Warriors regarding their big three, and we have to wonder, is the dynasty finally over? Talking more about the game, the Warriors couldn't really get it going offensively, and of course they didn't play a lick of defense. As a team, they were missing badly from three, were getting killed on the boards, and most importantly, their top players couldn't really give them anything. The Kings' game plan of blitzing and denying Stephen Curry worked to perfection. 22 points on just 3 made threes. He simply could not get a shot off. The playmaking was also a major issue from him, having 3 times as many turnovers as assists. Then we get to the topic of the entire game, Klay Thompson. 0 points, 0 for 10 from the field, 0 for 6 from 3. This was probably the worst game I think he's ever played in his career. And now, there are major questions about his future, not just on the Warriors, but in the entire NBA. And that's been the story of Klay Thompson this entire season. It was undoubtedly the worst year he's ever had. His shooting was inconsistent. The defensive capabilities have clearly regressed due to injuries and age, and those issues could not have come at a worse time. It doesn't look like those issues are going to go away. So now we have to question what his value will be in free agency. You see, this was a disastrous season for the Warriors. There was a lot of miscommunications, a lot of outside noise that crept in. They had big suspensions, injuries, coaching deficiencies. It just was not good. But hey, they're going to look to continue to win. So what could they do to return back to the NBA's best? This may be the most important offseason that this team will have in this era, as they have to capitalize on the short window that Stephen Curry has remaining while not completely gutting their future. And to do that, we have to dive deeper on what exactly went wrong for them. It's just that the team execution was bad, and of course some of that was on team chemistry, but also coaching. Diving deeper into their coaching issues, Steve Kerr was just bad this year, and oftentimes he made a lot of boneheaded decisions. I feel like the first step in their retool is improving internally, and Kerr's gonna have to switch up the philosophy a bit for this team to be competitive again. So now we can move to team construction. It's very obvious that this team needs some more offensive juice, as that was a big reason as to why they failed this year. Their offense just relies too much on Steph Curry, and that was very apparent in the play-in game. And at his age, Curry can't do everything for this team, so some big trades need to happen. The assets that they have to use are Jonathan Kuminga, who played great this year in an improved role. There's Brandon Podziemski, who was the 19th overall pick in last year's NBA draft, and Moses Moody, who I would keep if I'm the Warriors, but they may not have a choice. They also have the contracts of Andrew Wiggins to trade, who regressed badly this year, as well as Kevon Looney and Gary Payton. But how the Warriors navigate this will be interesting, considering that they are hard capped and they do have to make the decision on moving on from their young pieces. Just as a disclaimer, these potential moves that I made are ones that I think make sense, and using their young assets is just something that they're going to have to do since they want to continue to try and win. Now, they're not going to be able to trade for any of the upper echelon star players, but you can look at the next tier of semi-star players. Now, the first player that comes to mind is Mikal Bridges. After a down season in Brooklyn, their franchise plans may have to change. The Nets have 0 draft capital, so the only way for them to rebuild will be through trades and smart free agency moves. Now, Mikal was bad this year. No one is doubting that. But I think it's obvious that he's not a first option. And in Golden State, he obviously won't be that. The trade I have in mind is Mikal Bridges and Dorian Finney-Smith for Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, and draft capital. Wiggins is just in his deal for cap and could be rerouted to another team. The bulk of this trade is going to be Jonathan Kuminga and the draft picks that they get. Kuminga is just 21 years old and has clearly shown scoring promise when given the opportunity. He's extremely athletic, has great touch around the rim, and his on-ball game is constantly improving. Now, with just one season of actual playing time, the Nets could be in line to give him a cost-effective contract that allows him to prove himself on the team. And then the picks are going to have some great value as well, considering that the Warriors would have to give up some between 2026 and 2028, as well as some pick swaps if needed. By then, the big three should be on their way out of the league, making the thought of those picks extremely valuable. Mikal Bridges is an amazing plug-and-play guy and would be an immediate upgrade over Wiggins. Improved shooting, on-ball defense, and shot creation is what the Warriors desperately need, and they'll be getting all of that with Mikal. Not to mention, the spacing that Curry brings will make scoring much easier for Bridges. So that's just one move that I mocked up, but of course one move would not be enough. They need another shot creator on top of potentially getting Mikal, and to do that, we'll look to Atlanta. After a disappointing season, the Hawks could look to retool as well, and a move that I'd like Atlanta to make is trading away DeJounte Murray. In this potential deal, I'm looking at trading Gary Payton, Kevon Looney, Brandon Podziemski, and some more draft capital for DeJounte Murray. I think an easier and probably a more likely DeJounte Murray trade would be Chris Paul pods some draft capital for DeJounte Murray. It'd be easier for the cap space. The Hawks would just have to have Chris Paul for 1 year, but then again, the Hawks would have to agree for that, and that right there is a big if. Now this might be a lot, but like I said earlier, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. DeJounte just had a career season and adds much needed shot creation to the team and another playmaker. So those are the trades that I would make if I was the Warriors. Now free agency would be the predecessor to these trades. The Warriors are hard capped and they can't really make any big moves until they get under that. And of course the two biggest moves that you do is bring back Klay Thompson and Chris Paul if you can. Those two are expected to be free agents at the end of the season, and clearing those contracts out would clear over $70 million. And that right there will release the Warriors from the hard cap. Speaking first about Klay Thompson, I think he could flourish off the bench if he isn't asked to do too much. You surround him with more defense, more playmaking, and have him just shoot the ball, I think he'd be a solid 15, 16 to 17 point per game scorer in that role. A 3-year deal worth between $16 to $18 million annually is what I would give him, with a player option after the second year. That would allow the big three, more than likely, to all be free agents at the same time. Now regarding Chris Paul, probably a 1-year deal for around $8 to $10 million. Now despite his age, Chris Paul still controls the game really well, and it was very evident that when he was on that Warriors bench, the second unit looked a lot better. And that right there is how I would retool this team. A starting lineup of Steph, DeJounte, Mikal, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Draymond is probably what I would run. Off the bench, of course, you have Klay Thompson like I talked about. You would have CP3, but most importantly, you would have the opportunity for Moses Moody to get a consistent role, which he definitely deserves. Now, would that team be title contenders? Who knows? Would gutting your future be worth it? Who knows? But what we do know is that the Warriors have to maximize their potential with Steph still on the team. That is probably the only way to do it. And look, despite it all, this team still won 46 games. And there were a handful of games more that they probably should have won. After they missed the playoffs in 2021, they came back, retooled a little bit, and won a ring the next year. So who's to say that after an aggressive offseason, they can't do the same thing again? And people like to point out multiple teams in the Western Conference getting better. The Grizzlies will be back. We don't know what moves the Spurs are going to make. And who knows what's going to happen with the Rockets. But of course in the NBA, you have to take the good with the bad. Other teams could falter as well. What's going to happen with the Clippers? LeBron James could technically become a free agent from the Lakers. And what if he decides to leave? And that's the beauty of the NBA. It's that we just don't know. And if things go right for this Warriors team, maybe these trades are enough for them to become title contenders once again. But for us to find out, of course, the Warriors are going to have to look to make these moves. There's a lot of questions surrounding this team. But very soon, we could have some answers.